Thank you for accepting this invitation. And here's the reason why. Um, I think that this conversation today is going to be very important for a lot of people. For me in particular, we're going to talk about grief. Elena is a systemic coach and grief specialist. And when you're going through a serious illness, as I was going through breast cancer, and as many of you as well, I was not sure when I was grieving, when I was sad, or when I was angry. These emotions felt to me like entangled and intertwined. So let's start with the clear definition of grief before we jump into other topics and talk about yourself more. My question is, what is grief? How do we separate it from anger and sadness? Where in our bodies do we experience it, and how does it manifest?
Thank you for this question. I would say that the grief is a natural response to loss of any kind, loss and change that we may face. And it can be a change of something or loss of something that we had, um, something meaningful to us. It may be threatened, changed, or taken away completely. Or it can be grief of something that we have never had, but we wished for, or we hoped for, we deserved, but never had. So it can go either way, grieving for what we had or what we never had. And it's important to know that grief is not only sadness. So if we repeat, its natural response to loss, and this response can be different for everyone. It can also vary from day to day, from life phase to life phase, and to certain situation to another situation. So our response can be different. And one day we can be angry, and another day we can be sad. And the next day we can be totally confused and then numbed. And it can be also mixed and very contradictory. So we can have different feelings all at once. And it doesn't mean that something is wrong. It's just how the process is. We are complex human beings, right? And the way our mind and body will respond to the loss highly depends on our personalities, our environment, the type of loss, the situation we are in. So it will never be the same for two people. Yeah, it will always be unique because our situation is always unique. And also to your question, how it shows up, it's a very important one because we often tend to think of grief as emotions only because it what we see in the movies or from the media, or we learned it somewhere in our culture that it's about crying, you're missing something, you're missing someone, and being sad. But it's not reduced to that, though it can be a part of it. With all these complex feelings that may arise, we may experience a lot of physical symptoms. So a lot of our physical symptoms can be affected too, starting from our level of energy and concentration to all of our internal system, being digestive system or sleep or hormonal state. So we may experience all kind of physical changes too, because of this response we have, this adaptation to change, to the new situation in our life after the loss or change, there's a big stressor, both emotionally and physically. And so our body will react naturally. That will be actually highly unnatural not to grieve. That would be actually very strange if something was important to us. Yeah.
Wow, that's a very deep answer. I'm sure that you could go about this on and on. But this is nice what you said, that we're not always sad when we grieve. And we will talk about this later. So I would like to start about your story with grief. How did you end up being a systemic coach and grief specialist? What did something happen in your life? What brought you to this particular topic? And why do you like? Because apparently you like doing what you're doing. It's a very special topic. It's probably very taxing on you emotionally, but you still do. So would you like to share your story.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I could never imagine that I would become a grief specialist. That was the last thing I would imagine for myself when I was growing up. Um, I always worked with people, so I have background in education, humanities, and facilitation. But the people's field, people development field, is not new to me. And I had a series of very profound losses myself. I lost quite a few people, also due to cancer, some of them, and also experienced other types of losses, separations, divorces, like one divorce. I luckily health issues myself, identity changes, moving countries and homes, and many other changes. And at some point, I was looking for grief support, and I couldn't find any, like the support I really needed. And I created my first self-help group uh, here in Berlin years ago. And since then, I understood that this is my calling to help people through grief. And I got educated, I got trained in systemic coaching and specialized in grief and health. And I find it this is the most rewarding job ever. But it also, of course, very challenging. I think this is both the biggest honor and the biggest responsibility to support people while they're navigating their journey.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the group that you started, the self-help group? What platform did you use?
It was actually in person in Berlin. I just wrote in some groups I was in Facebook that I would like to start something like that because I really need that for myself. It was specifically about the loss of a parent because back then I was grieving death of my mom to cancer, and so I really wanted to connect to people who've been through the same loss. And so it was only for women back then because I needed that space. And surprisingly, a lot of people wrote me, though they didn't know me. And so we met for over a year, um, in person and online then because the COVID hit. And yeah, that was the first one. But back then I was not doing that professionally.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and so then you said that you felt that it was your calling. How did
Yes.
you know that? What was the like answer from your body and from other people? Like,
Oh, well, it didn't happen overnight. I guess it was a process. It just felt really aligned with what I was feeling. I didn't turn it immediately into my profession because I had to work on my own things first, and also, of course, to get trained because it's a very specific and demanding job. And without the proper training, it can be really hard to deal with what's coming up and to help people properly. So I took my time to to cope with my own grief, to get trained. And throughout this time, I was questioning all the time, is it really what I want to do? And the answer was always yes. I find it really rewarding to help people in their real stories with their raw emotions. They're being so authentic and they're bringing a lot of trust and hope in the process. And I find this is just the biggest honor that I may have. Yeah.
hmm. Like you said, it started with a lot of loss in your life, and one of the biggest, well, it's the biggest loss to lose your mom. So I'm really sorry that you had to go through this, and nobody should experience this at such a young age. We should see our parents grow old. And so here it's also the space where we talk about breast cancer, and it's a shitty disease. It's a shitty thing to actually happen. Um, what in like to connect these two topics, the majority of breast cancer patients and survivors are women, and it is in connection with how you went through this process to have this female-only group for grieving. Is there a difference how men and women grieve, actually?
Um, yeah, back then that group was women only. Of course, now I offer all kind of support
Right. Yeah.
inclusive. Um, I do think there are differences. They may not be specifically gender related in terms of like our biology, but more about of expectations of society
Hmm.
and about our coping strategies and the way we deal with emotions. Because we have a certain upbringing, certain cultures, and this is really closely related to our gender. And it's a big topic, right? How to serve men and women, and of course other genders. Um, I do think that still men have less acceptance in the society with their emotions and are going through different adaptation processes. So, and this can bring a lot of disadvantages for them, of course. There's a lot of disadvantages for women too, because we all know that in certain structures, women are expected to go faster or to perform at their maximum all the time. So I guess for both sides, it's just really challenging with a lot of advantages and disadvantages, or like easier parts and more difficult parts. Yeah.
Mm.
But in the end, it's all about like individual coping first, like the way we tend to cope with the situation, what we learned, and the access to resources that we have, internal and external. So the system we are living in. And of course, many of those will be highly influenced by gender, just
Mm.
because that's how we live in the world within these systems, unfortunately.
Would it be very simplistic view if I said that women are kind of allowed to cry and to feel sad and to talk about this, and men don't? However, women are supposed to quickly put themselves together and continue their roles in society, while men can grieve quietly. Was like this is the stereotype that I have in my head. Is it the correct assessment?
I cannot say like 100%, of course, because there are nuances to everything. Uh, of course, there are always expectations from everyone, and certainly like societal expectations, cultural. So depending on which culture we are talking about, and the majority of clients I have and the culture I'm now living in, uh, it definitely there's a lot of pressure for men to man up and not to feel anything and to express not to express anything, and this means a lot of suppressing of emotions and also not asking for help because it's seen as a sign of weakness.
Hmm.
And I do think it's still a pretty dominant narrative in the area, though it's changing in certain parts of the world. I do believe so, hope so. Um, and women, again, it's a very generic, of course, now response. They are seen as more like allowed to show emotions, which can be good, of course, but also the expectations to still to form, like to care for children, to care for parents, to look good, to fulfill certain standards when it comes to body and performance, within the family system and the society. Yeah, so I think none has it really good when it comes to grief. We all have what I see that most of the people coming to me are women. I see the increase of men coming in. I'm really, really happy about that. And I also work towards making this accessible to all genders. But yeah, there's still a long way to go. And I think this is also our goal as professionals to create the systems that are inclusive for everyone and to ensure that everyone feels safe and welcome. But yeah, of course, there are a lot of challenges in this field, how to make it accessible, but also long term, not just getting immediate help, but to influence this system that forces us to perform, to fight the emotions, not to get the help we need, irrespective of gender. Yeah.
Yeah, we are complex beings, and you mentioned it already several times, and it's not only black and white, but it just really striking to me how quickly for everyone, like me including, to shift to the stereotypical view, to binary view, to this kind of mold of genders, without going into the depths and all the complexity, all the layers that are out there. Um, and now, like all the uh, media and like I feel like everybody talks about this complexity, everybody talks about emotions, but still we often return to this duality of the world. Duality, okay, there are we even know there are more genders and sexes than just men and women. I mean, there are two genders, but much more sexes, and we still, yeah, operate within this binary system. And so now I'm bringing our conversation to the core of this interview today, breast cancer. Um, as a breast cancer survivor, I was grieving my past and my future, like you said. In the beginning, I was grieving, like now when I am looking back at it, I was grieving my health, to be hit by breast cancer so early. I was hit by mastectomy, losing my breast, losing my femininity, losing my hair also. Um, Opportunities in the future that I missed during my treatment. Then I lost my partner, lost my job. So all of this were as a part of impact of breast cancer. And some moments were conscious, where I was angry and sad. Some moments were happy. Uh, some moments probably I didn't really, I wasn't probably aware at the moment that I was grieving. So it's quite a spectrum of bodily and psychological responses. And from your experience of working with women with cancer, um, what are the main um, triggers for them? Like what I told you, is it something that is common in women with cancer, or with breast cancer? And maybe you can go a little bit more into depth about this particular illness, this particular diagnosis. What is grief to breast cancer?
Yeah. As you described, it can be very layered process, right? And I think when it comes to cancer, and especially to breast cancer, because luckily the rates of survival is pretty high, and sometimes and understandably we focus on the medical procedures, right? Just to ensure that we survive, and of course this is crucial. Uh, but then this emotional part, the processing, adjusting emotionally, is often left out, and this is why this grief um, is often less recognized, because if we survived, it's kind of we are done. Yeah, but the entire process from the beginning throughout and after, it's a fluid adaptation to this loss and change. And we are not done. And we rarely get support with that because the focus is on medical aspect, which is crucial, but it's not the only one. And I think this is what makes it pretty unique also. Like the grief that is not highly recognized, not all recognized this aspect. And it makes it like getting the support less um it makes it more difficult, right? Or even to recognize yourself that I need support, because you're done, grateful you survived, right? um or like focus on treatment and nothing else matters. It's not like that, of course. And I think there are like several parts. What you described it like absolutely in all depth, right? So first of all, of course, it's like this grieving of this safety, right? Predictability. So we had certain vision, certain narrative of our lives, and now it's disrupted, right? And when cancer enters the story, like the life like changes completely. So it's before and after. and to grieve what we've had, yeah, or maybe what we hoped for us. It's alone. This is a huge aspect of that, and of course, to if you're standing in the beginning of this journey, like diagnoses and the treatments, they just start a lot of anticipating grief. What will happen? What else will I lose? This anxiety and uncertainty about the future. So, and little by little to lose the joys and the rituals of your daily life, because you have different capacity. Your energy
Mhm.
drops. You experiencing physical changes, sometimes very dramatic. As you said, all grief around the body image, which again for women in our society, and now I generalize, but I feel that this is what the majority of women experience. There's certain pressure to look certain way, to present yourself in a certain way, and of course, it's not only externally, right? Because we also want to
Yeah.
feel certain way. We want to be healthy. We want to be beautiful for us. Yes. And now that is changing. And who am I in this new body, with this new level of energy? And I don't know what comes next. What else will I lose? How will my relationship be affected? How will my family be affected? How will my job be affected? Where am I with this diagnosis? Where is my place in the society? And what does it mean for me, to my identity, to my sexuality, to my fertility, if that's the question also. If um, we usually operate within certain systems, right? The family, the community, and cancer always means we become dependable in a certain way. So we lose our independence in a way that we need more support, or we should or must have to reduce certain responsibilities because you are not able to perform them within the family and within the community at work. And it can hit hard,
Mhm.
is to lose your freedom and your independence. Yeah, and I think it's all layered. So it's all. I always talk about grief as something that has ripple effect. So it's not always the loss of something or someone, like a physical absence or change something. It it has a ripple effect throughout all layers of our life: emotional, physical, family, relationship, work, community, our spiritual maybe aspect as well. If we had certain beliefs, they know to see why did it happen to me? How will I make sense out of it? Yeah. And so, or what can support me? So I guess on all of these levels, there's a lot of adaptation and a lot of questions. How do I make sense out of it? How to
Mhm.
support myself? And that on the top of obviously overload of medical information, decision making, a lot of stress coming from treatments itself, like just the logistics of it. And so it's just an enormous overwhelm altogether on all levels, I think. Yeah.
To describe is very much focused on the identity, and you mentioned it, that it's loss of the identity. It's the state where you don't know. I'm no more that, but I'm still not this. Um, I've got a few questions actually
Yeah.
because of this topic, but the most immediate question is, can we grief proof? If we know that grief has so much impact, um, mainly negative, or a lot of negative impact on our lives, on our physical state and mental state, can we prepare for this? Can we do something to not grieve or to grieve less?
Yeah. As we said, like the grief is a natural response to loss. So the goal is not to grieve less or not to grieve. It's absolutely not. It's like we don't have to, want to eliminate the natural process. It will come anyways. It's more about how we engage in it, how we respond to it. Because grief will come either you want it or not. We cannot control it. We can just cope with that. And so the emotions and the physical state that may come with that, and all the system changes around us. Many of them we cannot control. And it's important to make peace with that. What we can control is how we respond to those changes and to those emotions and feelings and everything else. And this is, of course, something we can control, at least partially, right? And of course, we can prepare in a way that we develop coping mechanism. And we have some already. We made it till here in life, so we know how to cope with certain stress, right? And also to have more tools in your toolbox, emotional toolbox, how to manage. For example, if you know you tend to be angry, how to cope with anger, how to find healthy outlets for anger or guilt or shame. If you know that you have tendencies with like to think negatively of your body, maybe to work towards that tools, how to develop more body acceptance, because it can all be learned, right? So to have more tools for the topics you think you are most vulnerable at. And of course, to prepare to activate all possible resources. So coping tools are also resources, right? It's our internal resources. Work on, of course, on self-compassion, on self-kindness, and giving yourself grace. Of course, this is our internal strength. But also to see what external resources we can activate. Because if I can, like I usually explain it pretty visually with my clients. So if you imagine that you have certain amount of stressors
Mm-hmm.
and so resources, so usually we have kind of a scale. And in life, we always have stressors and not always negative. So stressors can be also like pleasant, like it's just work, family, responsibility. So, and we balance this with resources. So we know how to cope and more or less we balance through life. And when we have a diagnosis, when we have treatments, we can imagine that our stressors are multiplied. They're like 10 times bigger, millions times bigger. And so like stressors are like, whoo, and
Mm-hmm.
we really need to balance it somehow. And so what we can do, first of all, we can lower our stressors, like reduce our stressors. So we cannot control disease, right? But we can see which areas of our lives we can lower our demands. We can lower our tasks. We can reduce the load in many other areas of ours whenever possible, to delegate, to reduce tasks, to lower our own expectations, to make everything perfectly. So to put it a little bit like a little bit more towards balance. And
Mm-hmm.
then on the other side, to activate the resources. So to put it a bit more and more in balance. Maybe it will not be perfect. And by activating resources, I mean internal strength. We talked about it. And external systems, be it looking for support, external support, therapy, coaching groups, communities, safe friends, safe people around you. So already prepare that you may need more support and to reaching out to look for sources of that support, optimizing your day-to-day life in a way that maybe reducing, delegating certain tasks, looking for how you can outsource certain things because you will not have capacity for that. Learning how to ask for help. It's very important that many of us are struggling with that. Uh, so to activate all internal and external resources that are possible to be able, when the stress comes, and maybe it will come 10 times bigger than we expect, but at least somehow to be able to be aware that when we have a bigger stress, we need to activate more resources. That's just how the mathematics works, right?
Yeah, so it looks quite a complex issue how you described it. Not only do we need to be aware of this grief and sadness in our body, because as you mentioned, it can also manifest through happiness, through positive experiences. Nonetheless, still being the grief, we need to deal somehow with it. And then we need to have like a toolkit of all of these internal and external mechanisms that we can pull out of the bag and try to use them. But not only that, especially for coming out and asking for help, we also need to have some certain inner strength. So it's quite a complex path to that. And I would like to start with the beginning, like when does So how do we recognize when grief hits, especially, of course, when we hear the diagnosis or when we hear some news about a loss? These are direct events that impact us. But in happiness, how do we recognize grief in happiness in order to cope with that?
I don't think that we need to cope with everything, to be honest, because feelings are not good and bad. They just, like, they can be pleasant or unpleasant. That is true, but they are not good and bad. They're just all neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And they come for a reason. Yeah, they tell us that we have some needs covered, uncovered. If our needs are covered, we are relaxed, we are happy. If our needs are not covered, we can be stressed, angry, guilty, or whatnot. Right? So it's more about not to react to the feeling itself, but to see, what does it tell me? What is behind these feelings? If I'm angry, what is behind this anger? Maybe something feels unfair. Maybe my boundaries are crossed. Maybe something else, and to see how you can cover this need, right? And that's why, if something is actually feels good, if you feel okay, uh, I don't see any need to kind of cope with that. We can just enjoy that and see it as a resource, right? To strengthen us and just to be alive and enjoy that, right? But I think, like, when it comes to coping, it's about not coping with this challenging situation. When
Mm-hmm.
something drains us, when something we feel that makes us unhappy or feeling like really heavy on us. Of course, it's worth looking into that more in detail to find this certain level of acceptance or peace or relief, right? And it's more about how you're feeling. Is it draining you? Is it
Mm-hmm.
it's heavy? And then it's worth looking into it. If you're feeling great, enjoy that. Take it as a resource. It's wonderful.
Great. So what I hear you said um, about this whole and quite complex topic, that grief is present in our lives. Anyway, we cannot future proof from it because this is a natural and normal part of life. We should not resist it. We should let it go through our bodies and minds. And whatever happy or sad with, we just need to be more attuned to what we're feeling. And then when it becomes unbearable, only then, or in these instances rather, then we take the tools.
Um, in general, I mean, I wouldn't wait till it becomes unbearable. It's more about staying aware
Uh-huh.
if you're going through what you're feeling. And when something needs to be addressed, when something feels heavy, or when something feels challenging, to look into it and, like, to see what it is, like, try to see what it is and try to like, recognize what we need actually and take action on that to meet your need, and either with internal or external resources, depending on what is available, to meet these needs at least partially.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think it's all, and the coping is all about this mix of healing, understanding what's going on, and taking action. Right. And we will all have our tendencies. So some people tend to rationalize. So really they to understand where it comes from and what it is. And they read books and attend courses and go to therapy, but only to intellectualize that. But they don't take really time for feeling, like really having this raw emotion, or sometimes they don't take action. Some people on the opposite, they are really good at feeling. They feel it all and they own it, but they don't really know what to do with that. And some people, like, all busy, taking all possible actions, keeping themselves distracted or feeling useful, managing things, but they don't really take time again to feel or even understand what they really need. And we will all have our tendencies. So these examples are just very extreme. We are usually the mix of both. It's more to understand what tendencies you have and to find this right balance so all of parts are more covered so that you allow yourself to feel, you understand the process, like, as much as we can, of course, and understand what you need and to take action to meet this need as much as you can, not ideally sometimes. So I guess this is the balance of those elements.
I see. And what you said about these different needs, different coping strategies for everyone, because we all manifest this grief differently, right? And it makes me thinking about this famous 7 stages of grief. Is it like a gimmick or what?
Well, I'm at this moment I'm getting usually pretty pretty
Everybody, I don't know,
sad.
maybe a lot of
Okay,
people
I'm
asking.
really glad you asked. I'm really glad you asked. The 5 stages of grief is a
I
myth.
see.
It's a big myth. I mean, there are other models with more stages or less stages. So the thing is that um, the stages of grief were part of research like long time ago, and that was brilliant in the time because it was an attempt to kind of understand this process. And for that, it's really, really brilliant because it was one of the first attempts to really understand what it is. The thing is that it was designed for people with the terminal illnesses only, um,
Mhm.
so people facing their death. And then it was started to get to being applied to all types of grief. So all the stages, and this is how it should look like for a healthy person. The thing is that it's not applicable to all types of grief, first, and it's absolutely not a model for everyone. It's one of millions of possibilities of how it can look like. As we said, it can be any type of emotion. It can be any. We don't choose what we get. We just feel it. Yeah. So you can have any stages at any moment. It can be linear, it can be in circle, it can be up and down. Like we all have our unique process. And there's the biggest myth that this process has some structure. There can be some patterns, like because of course people with similar experience, maybe they have this kind of pattern, but they will never be absolutely the same. And it's very important not to have this expectation that first I will feel this, and second I will feel this, and next year I will feel this, because it gives us additional layer of frustration and expectation. And then we are judging ourselves for doing it wrong, but there's no right or wrong.
Or it
Yeah.
makes us robots, right?
Yes. So there's no such things as stages of grief, like a set stages. We will have our individual phases, non-linear, chaotic, unpredictable, what is not. What is true, what I find true, that at certain moment of life, there should be certain level of integration. And by integration, I don't mean being absolutely happy and as if nothing had happened in your life,
Mhm.
right? Because it will never be the same. We are changed by this experience. We are not the same person as before. And the expectation to be as before is absolutely unhelpful because we are not. We have this new experience. We're different people. Um, but it's at certain moment to be able to integrate it to your life. So to still have your life with your daily tasks, your daily routine, and grief will hit at some moments again and again throughout your life, maybe. And this is absolutely fine. And to somehow to have these tools to cope with that, to maintain this baseline of being able to live your life. And I'm not talking about absolute happiness at all, right? Or not having grief never in your life. Yeah, it's more like integration and adapting to it. Yeah, this is ideally what happens at
Mhm.
the moment. Again, adaptation looks very different for everyone. There's no certain standards how it looks like. Yeah, so stages of grief, I encourage you to dismiss this, absolutely, and to not have this expectation from yourself or from others, because others will go through their own unique process. So not to compare, not to judge yourself and anyone else.
Thank you for dismissing this theory about stages. And it goes back to what we talked at the beginning of the conversation about the complexity of a human being. We cannot just be like man and woman, and this is the manual. We cannot be just a person who agrees, and this is the manual. This is probably a tendency that we have to, especially in moments of desperation, to look for structure to look at steps 1 to 3 in order to know, okay, if I do 1, then I immediately land into step 2. But
Yeah.
like you said, this is not linear. This is quite chaotic, and this goes in waves.
Yes. If I
It's
may, I need a second to for my battery. Oh. Yes, I think you're absolutely right, because some structure eases our anxiety, right? We know what comes next. And we are looking for that in anything, right? We like things to be predictable. And this is, I think, the biggest challenge of grief. And especially with cancer, right? It's unpredictable enough already, right? And it's what makes it also so difficult, because we don't know the outcome. And the grief it's unpredictable in its core, right? Because we don't know how we will feel. We cannot know what happens next hour, today in the evening, or tomorrow or next week. What we can only do is to try to comfort ourselves that when it comes, we will have the tools to cope with that. That's the only thing we can do. But of course, it's our human nature kind of to grasp and try to control the things that we sometimes cannot control, right? That's why it's also unhelpful to believe in stages, because when it's not fulfilled, this expectation, it will most certainly will not be fulfilled. We will be questioning our own reality, our own sanity, because it didn't happen as expected, right?
Computer just died.
Are you grieving it now?
I'm not grieving, I'm grieving our podcast.
Don't grieve it, because we are still live recording. And there are 2 things that I want to ask in the end. Thank you for coming back from your phone, connecting from your phone. Um, we have established that grief is complex, because we are complex. Grief cannot be linear, because we are not linear. And you've already mentioned what we can do in order to cope with grief, but maybe you could now summarize and boil it down to 3 practical tools that any type of personality, any type of person who goes through grief can take in order to relieve some sort of first wave of grief.
Yeah, thank you for your patience as well. I do think the main tool would be a self-compassion and giving yourself really grace, kindness, patience, everything you can give yourself. Because we talked about this amount of stressors, yeah, we have when we are hit by an event like that, the process like that. And so the first thing to start is to be I know it sounds cliche, but to be kind to yourself. Because the worst thing that we can do is to put additional pressure on ourselves by judging, by putting expectations, by perfectionism. We have enough, so we can spare this part at least. And nothing else is possible without this part. So practicing self-kindness, self-compassion, acceptance, and to this part, for me also belongs the daily actions for comfort and peace. And I'm not talking about the big things, but every day to do something that makes you feel okay. Maybe not happy, maybe not completely relieved, but at least somehow at peace. Being cozy, making your favorite dish, going for a walk, wrap yourself in a blanket, something that gives the signal to your nervous system, I'm okay. Even for a few seconds, even for 2 minutes, our brain will get the signal of okayness, right? Of relaxation or some kind of a little peace. Even for 2 seconds, it's enough. If for 2 minutes, it's enough. But every day, consistently, these small actions of self-care. Yeah, and on that, you can already, of course, as much help as you can get. So safe connection, safe system. I think without that, it's really hard to go through something like that. And of course, we start with our nearest circle. Sometimes the people we know or we think we can rely on, they will not be supportive. And that will be grief on its own, of course. if we can rely on people in our circle. So to be very explicit about our needs. Yeah, and to encourage yourself to ask for help, to turn to those people for help. If we cannot rely on those people, unfortunately, we should look for these people somewhere else, be it community, be it self-help groups, some external resources of those safe people. Yeah. So again, first is self-compassion and small acts of self-care. Second will be safe connections, like support system. And third, I think it's connected to the first in a way, but in the breast cancer, it's a lot about identity and our body changes, right? And it's with most of illnesses, it's like that. I think with breast cancer is especially because it can affect so much of how we look and perceive our bodies and ourselves to in a way that is accessible for you to practice like these body mind practices of self-love, self-acceptance, like body oriented, everything that makes you feel okay in your body, at least somehow okay. Of course, it's a gradual process. It's not like we wake up and, oh, I love my body, I accept it. But every small action matters of giving yourself, your body, the love, care, and comfort it deserves, especially through this difficult time. It doesn't matter how it looks. Yeah, so to um, dedicate certain time, certain resources, certain effort specifically to that part to develop again trust in your body, to develop again in your relationship with your new body. I think this is very crucial.
You say such important things. You mentioned that it may be quite simple, like to be kind to yourself, but it's probably one of the most difficult things. And I can definitely relate. And this crisis of identity with mastectomy, it took me 3 days before I could look at my breast, even after the surgery. When every day when the nurse was coming to clean the wounds and to change bandage, I would just like turn my head. I could not even look there. And then I sat with a doctor who was very compassionate and kind, who helped me to unbutton my special bra and to face it. But then it was still like a very long path. It took me almost a year to accept all my scars and all my body. So the moment where I said, well, this is I am, I will never be as before. These scars will always stay with me. I cannot resist it. It's just now part of me. And this little sparkle of kindness towards myself, where I really hugged myself, that was such a long and difficult way for me. But from that moment on, everything was happening only in the positive way. And of course, everybody else is different, and every woman and man who has breast cancer, they react in their own way. But this is just to the point. How difficult is it to do something very simple, like to be kind to yourself, to allow yourself be who you are, to wrap yourself in this blanket, to say, okay, I need a nap today, and to send a message to a friend and ask them to have a call with you or go for a walk. These are the simplest things, but probably you have also seen it from your clients, the most difficult.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, this also the culture, right, of perfectionism, of doing everything fast and perfect. And when the life hits, it's all of a sudden not fast and not perfect, right? But also our internal pressure, of course, because of that. I usually encourage if you find it, like, because I'm also struggling with being kind to myself. I don't know anyone who wouldn't, to be honest. Um, like in certain levels, at least, yeah, in certain spectrum, to still do that act of self-care, even if you don't feel like you're completely 100% now loving and accepting, just do it. It's like brushing your teeth because it will still have an effect on your body. If you're wrap yourself in a blanket and you're cozy, and even if you're not happy in this moment, your body will get the signal, I'm here warm and nice. It's already a big thing for the nervous system, even if you are not completely now in acceptance. So we are not striving for being perfect in this moment, for not grieving perfectly, and for not having self-care in a perfect level. It's okay to have it good enough. It's okay to have it in average level. It's more important the consistency of that. It's really like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. The more important is the consistency of that rather than the intensity of that or the perfect state of that. Because our brain needs the regular signal that we are okay, we are safe at some basic level at least, right? And the more we do that, doesn't matter if we believe that or not. It doesn't matter if we believe that brushing our teeth is good for our health or not. If we do that, it will have certain benefits on biological level. Same for self-kindness, for comfort, like these actions for comfort and peace. Do it even if you don't feel like, do it even if you don't believe in that. Your brain and body will benefit from it anyway. And with that, we're also developing a habit, right? And it's like putting the bricks on the fundament of your well-being. If you put one brick today and the second one tomorrow, even the little stone, it will build up, right?
This is very important that you reinforce this message. In this society where the success has to be fast and everything, the reward has to happen fast. We really need to understand that we are complex, the problems are complex, and we need time to deal with it.
So yeah,
Even though it may never go back, right? We may stuck with it.
I mean, yeah, some things will stay with us, right? And we will never be the same. And it does mean that we are stuck forever in this emotional state. But some things just are as they are, and this is a fact, right? It's more the matter what we make out of it, right? How we cope with that and how we treat ourselves. And I'm not sure if it's the last comment or if you have more questions. I'm open to any, like about it, like expectation to do it all past, to be over it and to get back to like normal, this mythical normal. I always encourage people when they think, but I want to kind of speed up the process. Maybe I can do something else, like 3 rituals more, and I will just speed up it. And it's a natural wish to feel better, right? To be okay. And it's very understandable. The thing is that I always encourage you to think about how many years you, like if they lost someone as a person, for how many years you knew this person. In this case with breast cancer, how many years did you live in this body? How many years you lived yourself like before the diagnosis? And now that it all changed, all at once it changed. How can we expect ourselves to immediately adapt to new life? After all years of our experience before, our brain is wired for that old life, physically, emotionally. All our systems are wired for that old life, and now we expect ourselves in 2 weeks, in 2 months, in 2 years, but now we are fully adjusted to new life. It just takes time to rewire, to find the ways to adjust, to adapt physically, emotionally, spiritually sometimes, to adjust all our systems around us, family, society, work, relationship. Yeah, that's why it takes time for all this ripple effect of change. It takes time to catch up with all the ripple effects of that and to find ourselves also in some sustainable way in this system. Yeah. So yeah, please give yourself patience, grace, and time.
And everybody else here, give yourself patience, grace, and time. This is extremely important to know. I would like to ask you more questions because each of your explanations, like each time I ask you the question, I hear something more that I want to ask, but I would keep it for another podcast. And meanwhile, I would just encourage everyone to be kind to themselves, but also if they feel a need to reach out to you, how can we find you and your work?
I'm always open to answer any other questions, and I'm really grateful for the work you do. I think it's so much needed. I have a website with my name and surname. Maybe you can link it below. So you can just
Link it.
Google my name and surname, Elena Winkelmann. I have social networks, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and you can find further materials over there. I have some videos on YouTube. Any of these ways are good to reach out to me. I always answer personally and ethically, hopefully. So I look forward to any comments, any feedback, any requests, and I hope to see you also in Ina's program. I encourage you to check it out because I do think this is so much needed, the holistic approach to life, to change, to coping, and to mutual support, which is the essential part of healing in the end.
Thank you, Elena. And for those you who don't know, and maybe you watch this video for the first time, I run a program for women affected by breast cancer during or particularly after the treatment when the life hits you and you don't know what to do. I offer a 3 months program where you will have access to coaching directly with me, but also holistic specialists like Elena, who is very generous to be part of the program as well. And then we help you to regain a little balance of your life and get the quality of life back. But having this said, I really hope that we will meet again in the future for either live Q&As on the platform, the free community Spark and Heal, which I will also link in the comment section. And let's continue this conversation because it's important to hear one thing many times before it really ingrains into your mind. So we need to say 100 times, be kind to yourself, be kind to yourself, be kind to yourself, before you really become kind to yourself. Thanks, Elena, for your time.
Thank you, Ina. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I wish you a lot of strength and patience and self-compassion on this journey.
Bye.
Bye bye.